my fellow readers, this is iDarkSymphony777 with another fanfiction review. As always, link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, I am doing a double duty today for this video, just like the previous video where I did 3 Super Koopa Link Mario stories. This time I'm doing 2! And it's mainly so I can get some of the stories I finished. There's been like a lot of stuff with work and I've been unable to actually record, so this is kind of like making up for it. It's like, instead of reviewing 1 story, I review 2 stories! I don't know why I decided to turn into a Looney Tune. Yes, I know I meant Sesame Street. Deal with it. But the stories I'm going to be reviewing are episodes 15 and 16 of the Super Koopa Link stories. They're both written by Starlet Duck, as always. And these 2 stories, they're very mixed. I like one, but I didn't like the other. So let's just get into it so we can just get it all over with. Because when it comes to episode 15, I'm probably not going to talk about, most of this video is probably going to be talking about episode 16. Mainly for one specific reason. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So, episode 15. So, episode 15 starts with Wendy kind of cleaning her room. She finds her wand, and she's like, hey, I found my wand from when we took over all those islands. And then Mario beat us up. Yay! And then she finds a magazine from when she was younger called the, Great. What was it? Koopa Craze. There it is. Koopa Craze, which is a magazine she used to read when she was younger. She finds out it's still open, and they're actually doing a sort of audition for a cover spread. Koopa Craze is basically one of those stereotypical fashion magazines. That's right, fashion. Let me wear a bottle of bleach for a helmet. That sort of thing. And she goes and basically auditions, but she finds out that it has to be a triplet shoot, so it has to be like 3 people. I mean, she's like, but I don't know any other girls. And so Larry, because I mixed those dang 2 characters up. Larry and Roy, they offer help. It's like, we'll help you out, whatever you want. And so Wendy gets in her mind to use her wand to turn Larry and Roy into chicks. Basically, Larry gets turned into a Karen. I'm sorry. Offhandedly, it's not so much. Starlet Duck actually showed me a picture of what they're supposed to look like. It's just the description made it sound more like she looks like a Karen. Karen Koopa. Yeah, but honestly, that's not even a criticism. It's just more, when she showed me the picture, it's like, oh, it's an updo, okay. But the wording kind of made it sound more like Larry turned into a Karen. Well, that's more just inadvertently wording it wrong than anything bad. Yeah. And with Roy, he turned into Garnet from Steven Universe. Oh my god. That's still pretty funny to imagine. It's like you got a self-entitled middle-aged woman and a crystal gem. Nothing can go wrong. But yeah, so anyway. Continue on with the plot. Wendy, tries to teach him how to be girls. Larry and Roy agree with it under the condition that Roy, basically, the same thing happens to Wendy. Wendy gets transformed into a boy for a day. They kind of feel what it's like. And I was like, you scratch my back, you scratch yours. Sort of thing. So the story follows Wendy kind of getting obsessively controlling over Larry and Roy. And they're not really kind of liking it. Like, they're brother and sister, but it's kind of getting overbearing. They meet other group of contestants that were auditioning. They didn't get the role. Wendy did. And we kind of see Larry and Roy kind of just grows dissatisfied, and then Wendy kind of realizes the error of her ways when she realizes how upset she's making them. And so, I'll turn you back into boys and stuff like that. And Roy and Larry realize that they did promise to help her. They realize that, yeah, she's kind of being mopey and she did apologize. So, yeah, we'll help you out, too. And everything kind of goes hunky-dory. Like, in terms of plot, this one's a very simple plot. It's just Wendy wants to audition for a magazine picture. Realizes she has to have 2 other girls. She turns her brothers into chicks. She becomes bossy. She learns the error of her ways. She apologizes. They're like, okay, we'll help you. She teaches them how to do like manicures and makeup and stuff like that. They get the role. They get the picture, and da-da. That's plot. It's not a complicated plot. It's decent for what it is. But in terms of everything going on, I think it could have been just a smidge a little longer. That's really it. In terms of characters, like the only character that really changes is Wendy. I think Wendy's character in the story kind of carries the entire story because she starts out as sort of like the Wendy we've seen in the series before this point. She's kind of vain. She's over the top. She's very ridiculous looking. Like, she's very ridiculous. She kind of hypes herself up as being beauty. There is kind of a hilariously internal moment of me when she first puts on the outfit and then she starts heading towards Cooper Craze. I literally pictured Staying Alive in my head because it seems to be like the only song people think of when they see any character start doing a swagger walk to somewhere. Staying alive, that whole thing. Like, you can't picture any cartoon or anime or any character just swagger around the sidewalk going somewhere without that song going in your head somehow. Like, I know that was just more of a me thing. I found it funny, but Wendy was the core central character. Yeah, Larry and Roy there, but they're not really as important as Wendy because in this case, Larry and Roy don't really develop as characters. Yeah, they're there, but this is Wendy's episode, so it makes sense that all the character development, everything that happens to Wendy. So when she gets Larry and Roy to become girls and they agree, she slowly actually degrades to what her more cartoony her more younger cartoony stuff, being very overblown, spoiled brat, wanting nothing more to control everything and have everything, and still does that. And Roy and Larry, they don't really like that, and then they wander, and then she kind of goes through contemplation and kind of realizes that she went overboard, and she needs to start mellowing out. She needs to stop being controlling. It's very simple. Like I said it once, I'll say it again, and I'll say it in the future. Simple doesn't automatically mean bad. And honestly, this character development with Wendy is probably the best part of the story because it shows another layer of Starlight Duck trying to make it more than it is. And giving us more dynamic characters. Like, yeah, I can give character development to Larry and Roy, but I don't have to in this case because 1, the series is still going on, and 2, this is Wendy's episode, so it makes more sense for all the character development, all the character plot, everything in the story to kind of revolve around Wendy in some way, shape, or form. That's very well done. I don't think it's the best story. I don't think it's as good as when they get sent to the internet or Runaway Reptile all the way back in episode 4. But I do think this is a pretty solid episode. It's not the best. This is one more like middle of the road sort of thing. But I like it. Really, my only complaint is again the length. I don't think this needs to be super gigantic, but I think maybe there should have been an extra chapter just going through the auditions of like when Wendy goes to Cooper Craze, and we see like a little montage of other auditioners, kind of like a cartoony, like you honestly could easily just go with anything at that, and just I think it would have been and it really wouldn't impact the story It just would have been a little extra bloat just to pad out the story just a bit more. Plus, come on, any time you see this kind of story trope in cartoons and stuff like that, there's always some kind of montage of like people screwing up or people kind of doing goof off. So it would kind of keep it form, And if we're getting like a fashion episode, there has to be like some kind of montage, especially if there's auditions and stuff like that. It has to be a montage somewhere in the episode, so it makes sense for it to be here. Episode 16. This one hurts because remember back when I said what was that one? Through Her Eyes. And I said through Her Eyes, like the only really thing that would have made the story much better if it was length. Like that's really the only thing hindering the story is the actual length. This is another case where it happened. This was a story that was kind of slightly being built up because we kind of saw another episode kind of reference this. But the episode is Larry wondering what his family life was back like. So the character we're introduced to in this story is a character named Jasper. He's basically a convict. He gets let out of jail. And he's basically trying to accumulate to life because he's been in jail for like over a decade. He's going more or less, he's drinking at the bar and stuff like that. And he's kind of upset about his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. He kind of starts doing research. He finds out about the Koopalings. He finds out that they kind of look like him. And then we cut to the Koopalings who are setting up this big carnival sort of thing. But Larry's not really taking it seriously. He just wants to goof off and just do nothing, play video games, and yada, yada, yada. And this was more or less the crux of the whole story. So basically Jasper finds out what the Koopalings are. They run into Larry. Jasper starts being introduced to each of the Koopalings. We get some shenanigans involving Larry, Lemmy the cable guy. Like Larry. I even asked Starlet Ducks, like, you don't want to do a reference to Lego Movie with the special, because that's honestly the whole special thing with Ludwig. That's a reference to the Lego Movie. It's like, you don't want to do that, but you made a reference to Larry the cable guy. And then her little answer is like, because I'm dumb. I don't regret nothing. It's like, alright, fair enough. Don't regret nothing. That's what I like about Starlet Duck. She's a very nice girl. But yeah, everything, it's very light-ended throughout most of the story until the very end. Like the last 3 chapters, I get what Starlet Duck was going for. You wanted to start another plot point to kind of slowly be weaved over the course, and then you kind of drop, but then she drops it, and she doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to have to explain this. So, at the end, Jasper realizes that these are more likely my kids, so he basically writes a letter, gives it to Larry with his hair, so he can do the DNA test. They all found out that he is their father. They go meet Jasper, and Jasper tells him what happened. So basically, Bowser in this universe, Bowser adopted the Koopalings as sort of like a loophole, because the Koopa prince can only have one child, which is the heir. Bowser worked around this by officially adopting the Koopalings. They can't. Yeah, they're older than Bowser Jr., but they don't. But he doesn't. Nor do the Koopalings themselves really count themselves as actual heirs since they were adopted. So it's a neat workaround with that. He found them in eggs floating down the river and stuff like that. And that's it. That was actually mentioned in an earlier episode, but we didn't really know much about the context of how he found the eggs. This episode, we revealed the context. So Jasper was basically a rebellious kid. He moved away to another town. He got into a biker gang and fell in love with another member. They fell in love, and they did the whole diddy donny dirty thing, horizontal limbo sort of thing. And the lady, freaking name, I'm actually forgetting her name. I think her name was actually what? Yeah, I can't remember. He does mention the name. Hold on, let me actually look her up. Okay, so I quickly went on and found the story. Her name was Opal. They had kids, They did the whole thing. She wanted to keep the kids, however, he panicked because, he was rebellious, and he kind of freaked out. He grabbed the eggs. He kidnapped the eggs and he threw them in the water, and then he got arrested, which is why he spent the entire time in jail. The Koopalings really didn't like that, and basically kind of bummed, kind of really devastated that their father abandoned them, more or less, and so it kind of takes a heavy toll on them. Apparently, there was actually supposed to be, and the reason I say it was supposed to start another plot thread was Starlet Duck actually mentioned that there was actually a 17th chapter, which was supposed to start the thread, which was Jasper trying to hopefully try and get their forgiveness and sort of thing. Which honestly would have seemed like a good idea. Usually when these sort of things happen, they always be forgiven, but I think in this case, and I actually posited the idea to Starlet that this would be a case where they wouldn't be able to forgive. Like no matter how much love and stuff like that, sometimes enough is enough, and you can't get forgiveness. And I think that would have been a nice idea to tell at a future time. She said she'd actually take it into consideration. I don't know if she's going to do it, and I'm not going to review that story when it comes out, except to Starlet herself. But it is a heavy emotional story that's burdened down by one single fact. The story is just way damn too short. Honestly, this story is 18,562 words. That is way too short to tell this type of story, especially since the whole end kind of has them very devastated, depressed and stuff like that. That it's just a odd juxtaposition when you get them sad and they get perked up. That it kind of feels like it was too rushed, which is why I don't. If the whole aftermath was actually a follow-up to this episode, and I did, the carnival was just one story, and then they find out that they have a father and they go meet him, and then everything after that was just an expanded version of the last 3 chapters, just massively expanded, I wouldn't really be complaining. Sure, it'd be a 2-parter, but we're giving time to tell the story better, and it really. That's where the biggest flaw with the story is. It comes off like my main problem with Hotel Transylvania 2. For those of you who don't know what Hotel Transylvania 2 is, or what it's about, my main problem with that is it tried to do too many things at once in terms of the plot. It's okay, you have Mavis and, what's his face? I don't know. I don't know. I forgot the guy's name. Going to visit his family, meeting his family and stuff like that, and then Drax taking care of his kid. It's like, okay, that's not a bad plan, but it felt rushed. And then at the very end, we're introduced to Dracula's father, and I'm horribly confused over why are we getting just a completely different plot now? Like, in the last, like, 10 or, like, 15, 20 minutes. Like, why does this need to be here? And that's pretty much what I have about, that's pretty much my main complaint about this story, is you have a simple, jaunty, carnival-esque story with, like, kind of comedy and stuff, like, something like a little, like, a somewhat low filler sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, for, like, the last 3 chapters, it gets, like, really, really dark, and then it just abruptly stops. And it just feels very weird. Again, it probably would have been better. It would have flowed better if, depending on how chapter 17 went, because, you know, I don't have access to chapter 17, so I don't really know how it would flow. Especially since for the most part, the only person who we kind of see some kind of resolution with is Larry getting hugged by Balor, saying, you're my parent, I'm your father, and stuff like that. I love you too, son. Can we go to Delfino? No, I have bad memories of that place. But that's beside the point. It feels exactly like I felt about Hotel Transylvania 2. It's just a random ass extra plot that comes out of nowhere. Doesn't really get resolved in any way, shape, or form, and on top of that, it abruptly ends before we even see a full resolution of that specific plot. Like, just like Hotel Transylvania 2. I mean, there's not even much to talk about in characters, because most of the characters, they don't really develop that much because it's short. The pacing thing, it's too fast because it's short. And, well, it's short and there's like 2 completely separate plots that you have to dissect. And all of them are just completely rushed to try and fit both at once. Grammar errors for both stories, nothing's wrong. Would I recommend these stories? I would recommend Sibling Photo Shoot. It's not great. It's not bad. Like, it's painfully average, but it does. But if you're looking for a Wendy-centric story, I mean, it's either this or Mysterious Scent, and Mysterious Scent is actually pretty dang good. But this is probably the second best Wendy-centric story in fanfiction, which is kind of sad considering the fact there's only 2, this and Mysterious Scent. And I don't think anyone would really want to see Wendy falling in love with Mario. But I digress. Conversely, I can't recommend Jasper. Episode 16. I can recommend episode 15. I can't recommend episode 16. It is just so rushed and so heavily flawed that that honestly, and I read ahead, if not for episode 17 being just so much episode 16 would probably be the worst episode in the Super Koopa Link so far. There's just so much wrong with it. So, what would I change? Like, okay, first off, what would be my favorite parts? Honestly, for episode 15, I do like the little montage at the end where Wendy's actually teaching him how to do, like, manicures and stuff like that. I thought it was a neat little moment. Yeah, it's not gonna. I'm probably gonna forget it soon. Who knows? But it's a neat little touching moment for Wendy's character. Like I said, yeah, Ludwig's supposed to be the main character, and honestly, Star inadvertently has made Iggy, the main character, inadvertently. But I wouldn't be surprised if Starlet Duck, as like a show of wanting to test herself, she makes it a completely separate story, just revolving around Wendy being Wendy. Like a day in the life of Wendy. Watch her put on makeup. Watch her put on jewelry. Watch her swag around, bossing around the people of Koopa Castle. And watch her put a crown on Daddy's head. And then Daddy turned and bows it. I couldn't resist. But I don't really have anything to say about episode 16. It's that bad. I can't. I mean, honestly, yeah, maybe the cool comedy section with Lemmy the cable guy. Yeah. Is cheeky and it got a chuckle out of me, but that'd probably be the best part of a bad situation. So, let's talk about what I would change. Sibling photo shoot, episode 15. At best, maybe add a montage at the beginning with like other audition. Like I said, you can literally do whatever you want with it. I honestly think just a little montage before getting to Wendy. It's like, oh, we can't, we can't take you because you're by yourself. It would be a cute little moment. You can do like you can flaunt your comedy muscles. You can do whatever you want, but that'd be it. No, the real meat of this story would be episode 16. This story needs to be long. With what the author was trying to do with this story, it needs to be long. It absolutely needs to be long. I think with Through Her Eyes, I mentioned somewhere between 50 and 80,000. This would probably have to be, if I had to rework the story, it'd probably be anywhere between 80,000 words and about 150,000. So around that ballpark. Have the premise set up at exactly the same. You have Jasper getting out of jail. He wants to find out more about life. He's drinking. He's hating the facts. Keep kind of making it sound like that he's the good guy and Opal was the bad guy. Lean into that. Lean into the possibility that the ambiguous situation over Opal not being there. Because the whole idea of history is written by the victors and skewered priorities and skewered bias and the whole memory thing. And kind of make it look like and go as hard as you can on make it imply that Opal was the bad guy. Because I think that was a neat idea. And that's actually a common idea in a lot of media when it comes to criminals. They constantly think they're the victims. With scalpers. Who doesn't honestly, everyone hates scalpers at this point. It's obvious. But they constantly paint themselves as we're just a service to the people of literally mass buying all these copies and upcharging you twice as much as what the store is doing. Because reasons! And we're the bad and you say we're the bad guys because you are the bad guys! Fuck you! But anyway, back to what I would do. Have the story kind of revolve over the first third of the story, constantly alternating between the Koopalings and Jasper. They're slowly started, instead of having it already set up, you actually have the carnival just starting to get set up, and as and then each chapter we're kind of given an update over how far they are. We're introduced to what roles each person will be doing, any shenanigans with Morton's pets, Morton's parrot, and other things they want to do. Maybe instead of a comedy thing, they do a talent show, more just added benefits and more things to do. Make it big, make it humongous, make it a celebration. But make it a carnival and actually give a reason for the carnival. And an easy reason was I think my people are completely demoralized over me constantly kidnapping the princess. You think? And this is my way of cheering them up. And then afterwards, you're gonna kidnap the princess again. Right! So, and on the other end with Jasper, you see him kind of slowly start to get more information about the Koopalings, finding out finding out where he's going, and then going through all of Darkland to get to the Koopalings Carnival. In one of those chapters, he runs into Opal. Now, Opal doesn't remember what Jasper looks like. Jasper knows what Opal looks like, mainly because of a tattoo. Mainly because I would have her have a specific tattoo, and when they meet each other and they don't know what they are, but Jasper sees the tattoo, he remembers it's Opal, he gets skittish, he runs off. Opal, kind of concerned and freaking out. Again, she doesn't know that it's Jasper, decides to follow him. So now instead of just Jasper, we have Opal. And then, literally, the end of the third party, they finish the carnival, they set up everything, they said, like, Morton and Roy are the cashiers. I wouldn't make Roy a cashier, I'd make him more of a security guard, mainly just to keep rabble-rousers at bay and stuff like that. But here's how I would do things. For the most part, all the roles during it. Okay, so Iggy would be the guy in charge, he'd be the MC, the ringmaster, i.e. he'd be the master of ceremonies. He would introduce everyone to the carnival. He did everyone information on where to go, what to do, stuff like that. Lemmy, just like in the story, he would be in charge of the zoo area where people parrot, and then of course he gets roped into doing comedy, and he leaves Morton's pet parrot. Roy, he's security. This is important in the future. Wendy, she's actually in charge of the talent show. She's going to be acting as the judge. She's the most vain. She's the most esoteric. So it makes sense for her to not only be the one hosting the talent show, which would be the big climax of the carnival itself before, they close everything down, but it would set everything into place. Ludwig, he'd be in charge of music. He'd be in charge, and he would have a dual role of being security with Roy, and he would also be in charge of the music, so he'd be kind of like a DJ / information boost sort of thing. With Larry, he'd be part of the cop. With Lemmy, he would help out when he would actually help out with Morton with the food. Morton, of course, would be the chef. Lemmy would be kind of a sous chef / cashier, kind of helping out with some of the things. And finally, did I forget anyone? No, I didn't. And Bowser Jr. Bowser Jr. would be there. And he more or less just be... Honestly, he'd just be... They would do like a little cheeky thing where it's like, $5 to take a picture with Bowser Jr. Because honestly, there's got to be like some kind of like weirdo phone booth picture thing, autograph thing. Like, you want to get a picture with Bowser Jr. and his dad? $5! And of course, you can do some cheeky things and stuff like that. So, back to Jasper. Jasper finds out where Opal is far in the distance behind him, keeping an eye on him, but doesn't want to really make him skittish again, follows in the carnival from a different direction. And so the second act would basically be each of the Koopalings getting to meet Jasper and Opal. But they don't know any. Jasper knows the connection, but Opal doesn't, because at this point in time, Jasper did the research. He kind of got a vague recollection outside that I might be the father, which means Opal might be the mother. Opal doesn't know, so keep Opal in the dark as long as possible. Throughout the story, of course, just like in the actual story, Jasper runs into Lemmy, offers some encouragement, does all the thing and meets all the Koopalings, but Opal. However, Jasper kind of feels off to a lot of it, like, which actually happens. Like, they might, like, he seems like a nice guy, but there's something about him that just seems off. To really layer the hints that maybe he's not telling the whole story, or maybe there's some information missing. Opal runs into them, and they kind of trust her more than Jasper, which helps out. And so we call, like, each of the Koopalings, they have some kind of like talent and stuff like that. You can do whatever you want. Of course, you can do, "Let me the cable guy, here's your song." And honestly, you can just do a whole bunch of references to like cartoons and other Mario games. Like, you can even, if there's a prize for, like, you can even have Wario cameo. But what I would do is throw in a cameo foreshadowing mention of Vivian, because the next story is supposed to set up the main plot of what's going to be happening in the rest of the series by introducing the Shadow Sirens. So it'd make more sense to establish Vivian's character here. Like, say everyone in the Darklands is welcome, and everyone beyond the Darklands is welcome. The news gets fetched to Vivian. Vivian wanting to at least, still however Vivian you want to write her with, have her join. And she doesn't really do anything besides, do something vaguely referencing the Shadow Siren. Like, you can have her in disguise. You can have her in the audience. You can actually have her be a judge with Wendy. But I think it would make a lot of sense to have Vivian here to kind of set up what happens with... Not only would it set up the events of episode 17 more, leaving her more worried, more kind of apprehensive about when the Koopalings come to grab her, but it would also be a logical reason for the carnival to end. Because, how I see it, the carnival in this case has to end with kind of everything kind of falling apart. And so having Vivian there, even as like a quick foreshadowing, like them being completely terrified of Shadow Sirens because of what the Shadow Queen did, would be reason enough for them to actually start kind of tearing down the carnival, and her just hightailing it back to Soda Forest. And so Jasper does the whole thing. He gives a letter. He writes a letter. He pulls his hair. He gives a letter to Lemmy. However, along the way, after they leave, Opal finally runs into Ludwig. Now, the thing is, however Opal's going to be designed, Ludwig would look the most similar to her. And because, with Ludwig, unlike, say, everyone else, Ludwig would kind of always be moving around. He'd be like, kind of like the same thing with Iggy and Roy. They're kind of always moving around, so they would be the hardest to get to. So it also makes sense for Ludwig and Opal to not really see what's going on until they're all together. Opal meets the gang, sees Ludwig, recognizes Ludwig as kind of looking like her ex-boyfriend, and then her getting hopeful. And then politely asking, not the Koopalings, but Bowser, can I stay at your castle for the night? Bowser's like, why should I let you stay? Opal takes him to the side and whispers. The story would have it so that we don't see what's being said, but in essence, she would tell him and said, I think I'm their mother. I want to find out if it's true. And so Bowser looks at the Koopalings and acquiesces, saying, all right, I'll give you one night. Here you go. If they're proven not to be their kids, get out of my castle. Don't ever come back. And so now we're giving a custom mini arc where we're more introduced to Opal and her side of the story, where we're introduced like Opal trying to constantly ask the Koopalings about their lives, like if they remember anything when they were kids. They all do the whole thing. We were just born from eggs. Bowser picked us up, stuff like that. And then Opal asked to see the eggshells. If any of them has eggshells. Honestly, I think out of all of them, I think Roy would probably be the one with at least some of the eggshells. Either Roy or Iggy. Iggy mainly for like scientific reasons and stuff like that. But Iggy or Roy, either one, would have the eggshells. Opal sees the eggshells. She freaks out, and basically says, "You're my kids. I'm your mother." And they kind of get over ecstatic, and it's like, and then she kind of gets depressed over thinking that she lost them. The Koopalings, they're wondering what's going on. Why do you think we lost you? And then we get to hear Opal's side of the story. Like I said, With Jasper, when we hear his side of the story, we only hear vague pieces of it. We don't really remember, like he's being intentionally deflective. Like you don't know, like he's not telling the whole story. With Opal, instead of Jasper telling the whole story and them getting mad, she tells them the whole story and they get mad at him. And so we get, instead of, through her telling it, we get a full flashback area. Like we get a full flashback of everything from Opal's point of view. So that way you switch from third person to first person, the entire events from Opal's point of view. Like her meeting Jasper, them running the gang, them doing some shenanigans, and then, they reference the sex. Opal gets pregnant, and Jasper grabs the eggs and runs and throws them in the lake, leading to Opal to reveal that the person she was dating's name was Jasper. They all remember, wait, there was a Jasper following us the entire time. That's him. That's her father. And then they get really pissed. And they get furious, and Opal, being wiser, and then realizes that, oh my god, I think that was him. So they read the letter. They double check the DNA test to see if it is his father, and it is. They follow the address to the home. They knock the door. Jasper opens the door. They bum rush him, all furious. They're about to tell. They're screaming at him, telling that why they abandoned him, and said, I would tell, and he's like panicking and stuff like that. So I'll tell you. And then Opal steps in to stop them, saying, you will stop. And Opal reveals that after all these years, she never knew why he did what he did. So now we get a completely same flashback, but instead of everything being told from Opal's point of view, it'll be told from Jasper's point of view, how he was put under a lot of stress, how he realized that he admitted that he grew up kind of, acting like a rebel, and he didn't want to be exactly like his parents, and he did a lot, and showcasing what it was like in the jail, him slowly going over the grief of everything. And then, of course, the end kind of gets them all depressed. I think they just, over the reveal that they just basically abandoned him. All the Koopalings leave, except Lemmy. Not Lemmy. Yeah, Lemmy. Because, Lemmy with the whole jokester attitude and kind of the more empathetic of the most. All of them, even after all that, even revealing that, yeah, he was very sorry, he's very apologetic, he regrets everything they did. And this is a realistic thing. Sometimes, when it comes to certain things, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to get everyone to forgive you for everything. That's like, we live in a time where it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do, someone will get pissed and get offended and triggered and stuff like that. Whatever you want to say, people will get mad at you for saying those things. And that's one thing. But another thing, when you do something so horrifically bad, that even if you do earn forgiveness, no one will ever truly forgive you. And I think that's honestly the better idea to take here. It's like, yeah, they understand why he did what he did. They kind of at least sympathize with him, but they still won't forgive him. So they, for the most part, they say, just don't come back. We want to forget about you. Don't bother trying to earn your forgiveness. This is just a step too far. Everyone leaves except for Lemmy, the empath, who basically hugs Opal, turns to his dad, and says, everyone, I don't know what to think. Everyone doesn't want to forgive you. I want to try to forgive you, but I don't think I ever have used Lemmy and his empathy to hammer home the point that what he did was so catastrophically bad that they can't forgive him. Like the rest of them, just they get pissed, but they kind of get understanding, and they leave without saying a word. Have Lemmy be the one to tell you to tell Jasper, I understand what you did. We're not gonna, but we can't. But what you did was way too far for such a petty, selfish reason that it would be impossible for us to forgive you. Maybe in the future, specifically just for Lemmy, you could come back and who knows, we may try and be friends, just you and me. But I don't think that would be a long time away. And even then, I don't know if I'll ever truly be able to forgive you. And so Lemmy leaves, leaving just Jasper and Opal. They talk. They realize that even Jasper understands the realization that Opal, well, he was the one at fault. He has to take responsibility. Opal, the person he loved long ago, still has some feelings for him. Not that she's willing to at least help him. So the story simultaneously ends with Opal trying to get Jasper to forgive himself. So that way, they're your sons. You have to live with that. You have to live with the fact that they're never going to forgive you, except maybe Lemmy. But I'm willing to at least help you out. So that way they just become friends. They don't pursue a relationship. Opal offers a hand as a show of a second chance to try and help Jasper forgive himself. And on the Koopalings, they basically find Bowser and Bowser Jr. You can have Bowser Jr. just do something ridiculous like throwing darts at Mario or something like that. They storm into the castle. They court him into the throne room. They hug Bowser. Bowser understands like what's going on. It's like we met our mother and father. Bowser understands like, so that's what Opal was telling the truth. They kind of figure out. They kind of say, wait, Opal said that? So, yes, Opal stayed at the castle because she thought she was your mother. I decided to give her a chance out of you wanting to at least have a a flicker of hope. But what about the father? And so they realize, and so they kind of reveal the whole thing with the father. And but then they go, it doesn't matter because you're our father to us, Bowser. It's like, oh, you're my kids too, despite the fact that you're adopted, but you're still my kids. And that's how the story would end. So it would be massively longer. Like I said, this story would have to be huge, have to be pretty long to get everything slowly acquitted, because there had to be several chapters dedicated to both flashbacks. There has to be several chapters dedicated at the beginning to just setting everything up, setting up all of the moving pieces that are going to be moving throughout the carnival. The carnival is going to be the bulk of the story. Like, everything is going to be shorter, but the majority of the story has to be that carnival, because there's so many moving pieces that are going to go on. The added benefit of foreshadowing the whole thing with the Shadow Sirens, there's going to be so much to do, because there's the 3 Koopa girls from episode 15 show up. They constantly reference that. There just has to be a lot of moving pieces, and the story really screwed the pooch when it came to length. And that's pretty much it. That's how I would write episode 16. So that is, like I said, ending thoughts. I think episode 15 wasn't bad, and episode 16 was really destroyed by just how short it was. Like, honestly, if it was longer, I would have given it a better chance, but as it is, it's just so short, it just ruins any chance of it ever considered being good. But that's just my opinion. So this has been Dark Symphony 777 with episodes 15 and 16 of Super Koopalings. I'll see you next time, and cut.